All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webinar today, Zero to Continuous Delivery with Jenkins Pipeline and Blue Ocean. Just want to let everyone know a few things up top. We are recording this, so you will be getting an email with the link to the recording after the fact if you wish to view again, share with colleagues, whatever it may be. There is a place on the control panel just called questions, and you are welcome to put questions in there. We should have some time at the end to answer them. We can also collect all of them after the fact. So even if you aren't sure it might be able to get answered on the line, please still ask it because we still can see it after and get in touch with you. We do have a lot to go over today and a lot of people joining, so I think we're going to get a lot of questions. So we're just going to kick it right off. I'd like to introduce our speaker, Liam Newman, who is a Jenkins evangelist.
Thanks, Max. Hello, everyone. This is, as Max noted, Zero to Continuous Delivery with Jenkins Pipeline and Blue Ocean. There it is. There we go. As Max mentioned, I'm Liam Newman. I'm a longtime CI/CD practitioner, Jenkins contributor, Word engineer, same thing as an evangelist. I'm on Twitter as BitwiseMan. Also, there's my email. So, as the title suggests, this is about continuous delivery. Continuous delivery is, of course, how we, one of our current best approaches for engineering software, where teams produce software in short cycles, and they ensure that it helps ensure that the software has a high reliability and faster release time. We get our software into the customer's hands faster and get faster feedback. Generally have a better process of getting our software out. So one of the key points for continuous delivery is that we have a straightforward and repeatable deployment process. And that means, of course, a repeatable build, consistent environment, which is where Jenkins and Pipeline comes in. So Jenkins Pipeline was basically created to support continuous delivery and continuous integration and continuous deployment. And it's a really good tool for defining our continuous delivery pipeline. Pipeline as code is this process in Jenkins where we are, rather than writing out a bunch of separate jobs or chaining together a bunch of separate processes in some special system or twiddling the UI, we check in our pipeline into our repository alongside of our build processes and product and other tools in what we call a Jenkins file. And that lets everyone get involved with the process of understanding what our pipeline is, being able to visualize it, and being able to interact with it and change it and improve it. And of course, since it's in the same repository with our product and tools, it versions alongside them. So when we make a change to our build, we can make a change to our pipeline at the same time. Pipeline differs in particular from some other tools that exist for Jenkins in that it is an entirely new runtime. It adds a number of new features, and it doesn't just create your classic freestyle job, but is a whole new way of running things. And the last part of this, of course, is Blue Ocean. Blue Ocean was specifically built to serve and make Pipeline more accessible. It's a new UI, a new user experience for Jenkins. It gives us a much prettier way of looking at Jenkins, and it makes the continuous delivery process accessible to the entire team, from really technical people to people who would rather just interact with the UI. And actually, Blue Ocean is really best explained by showing it. So let me give you a couple of screenshots of it. This is Blue Ocean showing us a pipeline run that has completed successfully. What you can see here is that it shows us the stages of the build, shows us the overall structure. You can see that there's a build stage and then a parallel browser test stage with a number of browser tests in there, and then a static analysis stage, and then deployment. And at each of these stages, because of the structure of pipeline, the Blue Ocean UI can show us more useful information at any point. So for example, if this were a case when the run had failed, Blue Ocean is able to interact with pipeline, understand that there are steps inside of the stages, and when you go and look at this run, you will see Blue Ocean is able to take you directly to where the failure occurred instead of having to parse through a whole bunch of logs or scroll to try and figure out where a failure occurred. The other thing that you get from Blue Ocean is the Blue Ocean Pipeline Editor, which gives you a way to edit pipelines in a friendly UI way. This is, personally, I like to work in a text editor for a lot of the pipeline work because I come from an engineering background. But if you have people that are less engineering focused, they can also use this UI, this friendly UI experience to be able to create pipelines or edit pipelines. And behind the scenes, the pipeline as code is actually, Blue Ocean generates code for this visual representation, making it so that one person can edit in the UI while another person would be editing in the text editor, and they don't conflict. They basically, it's bi-directional. So in some presentations, I actually run this up, run up a brand new Jenkins instance from the Docker Blue Ocean Docker image. However, since we're a little pressed for time compared to the longer version of this presentation, I've already created a Blue Ocean, a Jenkins instance with the Blue Ocean plugin installed. So let's consider a blank slate for a moment. Imagine that you have an application for which you'd like to create a continuous delivery pipeline. It has no pipeline at this point. It has a build, of course, but not a pipeline. That's our zero. That's where we're starting. So I'm going to use a basic Java application. It's a sample, the JHipster sample app. This is I chose this particular app because it looks a lot like a number of modern web applications. It uses a number of different tools. It has a back end and a front end, which they run on using a different set of tools, Maven for the back end and Java, whereas it's Node and Gulp for the other end. Uses Gatling for performance tests, and it can be packaged up and deployed as a Docker container. So a whole bunch of different things. Before we really dive into the code, I find it helpful to stand back and sort of plan conceptually what I want to do with the pipeline and what I want it to look like. So in this case, I think we need to, partly because of we have different technologies, we're going to need several different stages. Of course, we're going to need a build stage where we run the compilation of the backend, the Java. Then we're going to need to do some tests, probably some unit tests, performance tests, front-end web testing of some type, and then probably also a static analysis phase where we can do some looking at code coverage or making sure that all the formatting is correct. And then finally, deployment. Now that we have an overall understanding of what we want to build, I'm going to go into the Blue Ocean Pipeline Editor and sort of quickly translate what I've done into a sketch of what I want it to look like. Create the overall stages as placeholders, and then I'll iterate on those stages. So let me do this. And so here we are. So here we are in a basic Jenkins master server, and I'm going to switch over to the Blue Ocean view. One thing that I've had people ask before on this is, whether or not Blue Ocean is a replacement or some, is it anything like you need a special version of Jenkins? No, it's just your basic Jenkins instance, and Blue Ocean is a plugin, a user experience that sits on top of that. Underneath the covers, the standard Jenkins Web UI still exists, and you can always exit back out to it and view things in that classic view if you want to. But for the moment, we're going to go in using Blue Ocean, create a new pipeline from GitHub using my Bitwise Jenkins organization. So a new pipeline for that. Grab the JHipster sample app. Ask Blue Ocean to create a pipeline. Now, what happens here is it goes and looks at that repository, looks at all the branches to see if it can find any branch that has a Jenkins file in it. In the case of this, it doesn't. So it offers to create a pipeline in that repository and takes me to the editor. So in the editor, I can now start creating my stages. I'm going to start with a build stage. And let's see, there's also a backend stage here. And we're going to do some front-end tests. And static analysis. And finally, deployment. So one of the cool things about the editor is that it actually can do some basic validation while you have the pipeline loaded. And in this case, it tells me that each stage in the pipeline needs to have at least one step in it. So I'm going to go ahead and create those steps. Just basic placeholders so that the pipeline is a valid pipeline that I can run. This will take a minute for me to do. In fact, for this, I need to also create a parallel structure here. So nicely enough, each of these offers to have a parallel stage within that. I'm going to put my performance stage here and add a step for that. There we go. And now I'm going to change this to be unit tests. And so we have the backend tests with a couple of parallel stages in that stage, the unit and the performance. We are. This just takes a minute for me to go through and fill in each of these placeholder steps. Second to last one, static analysis. Let's do that. Finally, deploy. There we go. Now, the pipeline editor shows me that everything is valid. I'm going to go ahead and save this directly to master. Say added pipeline. When I save, this will generate the pipeline as the editor generates the pipeline as code, saves it to the repository on GitHub, and starts a run from that branch. This will take just a minute for it to run. There you go. Comes right up, shows me green for each of these. Now I could go into any one of these and pick out the steps, one or more steps inside there. In this case, it's just one step, and Blue Ocean shows me the log for just that step. Great. So now that I have this sketched out, let's go back, and I'll go back and start filling in each of these stages. Let's talk about that for just a minute here. So let's start with the build stage. Key point. Great thing about Jenkins is, of course, that it works very well as the glue between existing steps. You don't have to reinvent your build system to use pipeline. All we really need to do is perform a reproducible build, create an artifact that can be used later, and we'll store that artifact and use it to run tests and then deploy that to the environment. In this case, we're using Maven. So the pipeline is the code for this pipeline will look, if it just had a build stage, it would look something like this. But we're going to do something a little bit more complex. There's the basic. Now, this is fine, but it makes a lot of assumptions. First, it assumes that we're running, for example, on a Linux-like environment that has a bash shell basis. Now, if we're running on Windows, that won't work. It assumes that Maven is on the path somewhere. This is fine for these two cases, but since we have a number of tools to deal with, we're going to want to have some other way to sort of make sure that the environment that we're running our stages in is stable and reproducible. And for that, we're going to use Docker, which is integrated very well into Pipeline. So I'm going to add an agent directive to my build stage that will pull down a Docker image, create a container for a Maven 3 type Docker image. And now I'll add a couple other things that will improve the state of this particular the speed of rebuild. So I'm going to add these args. This will map the M2 directory for Maven, which is where it caches the dependencies. That way, when I run build a second time, I won't have to re-download all those dependencies, which take quite a while. And then for the Maven step, the Maven call here, I'm going to not run the full Maven build, but just tell it to run a clean and then package. And that package will that will produce one artifact, a WAR file that we will then stash. And stash is a way that we can keep artifacts around for the duration of the pipeline, and then unstash them in later steps on other agents during this pipeline. Before we move on to test, though, now I'll go ahead and show you that in action. So I've got my Atom editor here. I've got my shell here, and I'm going to fetch the latest version. You can see I'm a little bit behind. Great. Now, having done that, that pulled down the latest change from GitHub. And now we can see here's the Jenkins file for the pipeline that you saw just a minute ago in the Blue Ocean editor. You can see that each of the stages has one step in it, a little shell command that's a placeholder. So for the build step, I'm going to go in and I have these set up so I don't have to retype them all. Add the specific, there we go. There we go. So here's the agent with this mapped directory and Maven call. We're going to, of course, skip the test because we're going to run the unit tests in a later stage, and then stash all of the target folder for unpacking in later stages. All right, so I've got that. I'm going to save it. I'm going to commit that. Push that up to the repository on GitHub. And now, over here in Blue Ocean, I can go and tell it to run that. And this is going to take a minute of course, it's going to start the build. It sets up pulls down the changes from the repository, and you can see here it's now running the Maven command that I set out. This is going to take a while because there are some dependencies for it to pull down. This is being the first time that it's run this. while it's doing that, let me see, what do I want to mention here? Yep, okay. So while it's doing that, we're going to go ahead and move forward and talk about the next stage, the test stage. Much like the previous, the build stage, the test stage is also pretty straightforward. We're going to, the simplest version of it would be to run Maven and using the test stage with the test goal. Excuse me, Maven terminology sometimes escapes me. And much like the previous stage, it's also Maven dependent. So we'll add the same Docker agent block that we had from the previous stage. And here's sort of more the full version of what this is going to look like. You can see we're going to unstash the WAR package that we had from the build. We're then going to run Maven test, the Maven test goal, which should mostly just run the tests because the artifacts should already be present and should be Maven should be able to detect that these are up to date with regard to the source code that's currently in the working directory. And then we'll lastly run the JUnit step, which publishes the JUnit results so that we can look at them in Jenkins. Let's see here. There we go. The other thing is, of course, we're also going to, this is a parallel stage, as you can see here. And we're also going to run the performance tests during that. They will run in another stage where they will also unstash those changes and then run the Gatling performance tests. In the case of my example here, there's two things. One, Gatling doesn't, like many performance test frameworks, it doesn't produce a JUnit output, so we're not going to be publishing the results of that here. And also for this particular presentation, I'm actually going to comment this out because it actually takes quite a while and we're a little pressed for time, but the functionality is correct. Let's see, and of course, finally, we're going to run these in parallel. So we'll wrap these stages in a parallel block and run them just like this. So let me see, and then the front end tests are next. So let me go back to, there we go. Go back to Blue Ocean. Oh yes, so we see here the build completed successfully. If I click on this, it'll actually show me the full output from that entire build. It goes on for quite a ways, and then it continues on for the rest of the pipeline. So now I'll go back to my editor. We can look at the Jenkins file here, and we already have the parallel sort of sketched out in the back end stage. I've already set this up, of course, and you can see here we're going to ignore the test failures and continue on so that the JUnit can publish those. And I've commented this out so that we get a reasonably fast execution. So now I'm going to go back over to my Jenkins file, paste these in here. There it is. Looks right. And make sure that, yes, good. All right. And now I'm save that. Go. Commit the changes, push them, go back over to Blue Ocean and tell it to run that. Now, You can, of course, configure Jenkins to watch your Git repository for changes, and then it would pick these up automatically. I am running behind a firewall that I haven't set up to be able to get out to GitHub and back, so I have to manually launch this. But otherwise, that would be pretty easy to do. So once again, we're going to run the build. This will has considerably less time because it's not downloading all the dependencies again. There it is, it's already succeeded. And now it's stashing those changes. And once it's stashed them, it'll continue on and run. Here we go. So now, there we are. So now that we have these two steps running in parallel, of course, the performance one succeeded immediately because it's not running anything in particular. And then the unit tests will run here. While those are running, I'll go back and we'll continue on for the moment. Right. Finally, in terms of testing, we have the front-end tests, which require Node, not Maven. So we'll be using a different Docker image for this stage. It'll set up a Node environment for us, and then we'll execute the tests in that environment. All right, we'll get back to analyze in just a second. Unit tests are still running. So once again, you have the changes, the Jenkins file here. Here's my front-end tests. Again, I've had to comment this out just for time. Otherwise, it does work. And just for fun, let's make sure that show this here. There we go. Let's try that. So we can see that the environment is correct. I've saved my changes. I'll commit them as well. Push. And oh, I see, that's right. Well, this looks like the unit tests actually had a failure and reported an unstable result. All right, so the build failed. And as you can see here, Blue Ocean has taken the JUnit results that were published, processed them, and is showing me the one failure that occurred here in the web configurer test. I think I ran into this before. So I need to go in and turn off that one test. One second. Now, if I were doing this for real, I would, of course, go in and figure out where this problem is, but this is just a sample app, so I'm going to just go in and turn off the test, or make it so that there's no content inside it in this case. So test customize servlet container now prod. There it is. All right, so I'm just going to comment this out. There we go. And now I'm going to save my changes. Push them. Go back over to Blue Ocean. And as you can see, it's showing me the unstable run here. And now I'll go ahead and start a new run. And again, that'll take a few minutes to run. And when it's done, I'll show you some of the neat stuff about Blue Ocean and how it handles fixed tests. And we should also see the front end stage showing the Node version at that point too. While that's going, we'll continue on, talk a little bit more about the next stages that we'll do. The analyze stage. So in this case, again, this is where you would do things like code coverage or static analysis, running find bugs. Creating a SonarQube installation would be a great thing here, but I again don't quite have enough time in this presentation. So there's a blog here that was created by Michael Huderman that outlines the entire process of setting up a Jenkins pipeline using Artifactory and SonarQube. So in this case, we won't be doing any changes specifically for the static analysis. Yeah. No changes there. So finally, we have the deploy phase, deploy stage, excuse me. And once again, with deploy, we're not going to reinvent our deployment system just for Jenkins. Jenkins pipeline is the glue, and this is a good example of deployment having many meanings. In fact, I mean, you might be deploying to AWS or Azure, or deploying to a physical data center, uploading to an app store, or some internal artifacts server. I'm once again going to sort of abstract this away, basically to say that anything that you could run in a script, you could run in Jenkins. There's a lot of different things that can be done here. Publishing that OR file, but rather than getting into the details of that, we're going to just say there's a deploy script called deploy.sh that will run during the process and during the pipeline. So, hey, all right. So I'm going to jump back for just a second here and talk about our unit tests, which passed this time. And Blue Ocean tells me that we had one fixed test from the previous run and had no output in this case. So we're back to a succeeding pipeline and an all green for our build. It'll even show me that there were 2 changes in here from the previous run. I added the front end and then fixed that test. All right, so let's go look at the deploy stage, which will of course just run deploy.sh. There we go. All right. And of course, I have to also add deploy.sh over here. Actually, I'll do that through the command line. All right, copy that to here. And let's make sure here. Yeah, I've saved my changes, added the deploy script, and okay. Same thing as we've seen before. Push that. Go back here, master branch, and run it. I'll take a moment here to say I've been pushing these changes directly to master, but one of the great things about pipeline is, of course, that you can follow your usual best practices for however you currently work with your source code. So if you do pull requests or other kind of code review like Garrett, your pipeline changes can actually be done just like you would any other part of your infrastructure. So as you saw in this case, I added the deploy script and made the change to my pipeline in the same commit. So if I ended up going back to want to look at a previous version, I would those changes would occur together and would stay correct the whole way through. All right, so here's the deploy. This is actually showing you what I would like to show you over here in just a second, which is all the tests running. JHipster with a little bit of ASCII art here. It shouldn't take too much longer. And as we can see, we can watch the stages progress, be able to watch the log output from each one if we want to. There we go. That succeeded as well. And then each stage succeeds, and we watch the build succeed. Yeah, the changes where we added deploy, our tests are all reporting success. We have no artifacts published at this point, but that'd be one last step that we could do if we wanted to. All right, so there we go. So what's next? That's what we do. There's a few other considerations we can go into here. I think I've got enough time for it. That's good. All right. But really, that's zero to continuous delivery right there. The other considerations we might need to go into are some things that are more organization specific. For example, you might want to send feedback to the team via email or HipChat or Slack or IRC, any number, or Jira tickets. There are a number of tutorials on Jenkins.io for adding those notifications to your pipeline. I won't go into them here. The other thing you might want to do is have a manual acceptance step, or some sort of authorization where someone says, okay, now you can deploy this. There's a distinction here between continuous delivery and continuous deployment. The goal here being for continuous delivery is to get to where we could release every time, not necessarily that we do. And we don't necessarily want to automatically publish every single time we make a change. The input step shown here lets us pause the execution of the pipeline and wait for input from a human being. In this case, a little bit of humor here with deploy fire. So I'm going to go back in and make a change, one more change to my pipeline. And it's going to be a little bit more complex. So I'm going to want to deploy to staging every single time, but then wait for input before I deploy to production. And the part of this change, I'm also going to have deploy.sh take a parameter so that I can pass in whether I want to deploy to staging or production. I've also put a little placeholder in here for where I might put my notification steps. I'm going to take this, paste this into my, in fact, I'm going to replace the single deploy stage with two, deploy to staging and deploy to production. And at the same time, I'm going to add a parameter here, so deploying to, this of course would be more complex in a real world situation. But now my deploy script will take a parameter. I've changed the script, I've changed my pipeline. I'll go ahead and wait for input. that. Go back over here, run that. Now, how long will this take? About 4 minutes, probably. 4 minutes ago, excuse me. Takes only a couple minutes. So while that's going on, let me see. This is about what I expect it to look like when we're done. Might have a build container in here. Of course, I'm not doing that in this case. And then Blue Ocean will ask me will wait for input and give me a clear UI for how to get that. So let's go over here and watch that proceed. Shouldn't take too long. While that's going on, why don't we go ahead and take questions?
Hey, Liam. There were quite a number of good questions in here. One of them I think people might want to know about is how do you send input, like email, in case of failures or something like that?
Right. So that has actually been very well covered. I could show you at least one of those if I went and grabbed it. But on the Jenkins.io website, if you go to the tags for notifications, there's actually I personally wrote a whole series of at least 2 different blogs, one for scripted pipeline, one for declarative, that will show you how to add notifications for email, Slack, and HipChat. So I can go into them, but better. Yeah. It's just complex enough that it's not that I don't want to do it here.
Sure. Another good question was how do you conditionally run stages depending on what branch you're on?
Oh yes, that's another very good point. Okay, so we're back in Blue Ocean. Let me just show you this, and then I'll answer that question. So here we are waiting for input on whether to deploy to production, and I'm going to say sure, fire away. And so then this will complete by running deploy.h to production. Excellent. So the other thing we could of course do would be to say there's another good example of what you would do for deployment. So using the when directive, we can actually tell the pipeline to only run when the branch is, say, master or production. So if I wanted to just have it run off of master for these 2 steps, I would put in a when directive here. The when again is also can get a little complex. I could do, for example, an any of that would do either branch master or branch, I don't know, production would be another one, right? Number of different options here. You can also, if you want to do more complex expressions, you can do those like so. Expression, let's see here, branch name, and then do a regular expression comparison in Groovy for, say, release. Let's see here, front slash. Okay, so to get it, so if I were doing, there we go, release front slash and dot asterisk like that. That would be that would match anything release, whack, whatever, right? And that would only, now what happens is these the stages when you have a when clause only run if all the conditions are met. So that'd be another way to do this. What else?
Right. Another question that came up a number of times is how the Jenkins file relates to other management tools like Puppet and Chef. And is it something that's would replace them or would integrate well with them?
I would say that it integrates well with them. Once again, it would be Jenkins works great as the glue between the steps, right? So on some previous teams that I've been on, they've used Jenkins to rebuild their cookbooks and then redeploy, and basically so that those things would happen. Jenkins would just you'd run a script from Jenkins to do that.
Great. Some other questions are about modularizing the Jenkins files and the builds. So, for example, one came up about, is it possible to separate out certain, some of the logic from the Jenkins files into, shared libraries or something like that? Could you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Wow. Okay. Well, that's getting a little bit more into the advanced end of things, but you can do that. Doing that off the top of my head is not what I'd prefer to do if I can. Basically, what you would have would be you would add a library, forgotten the annotation. There it is. A library annotation here to pull in a shared library. Shared libraries let you create custom steps and add classes and other functionality into the pipeline environment without necessarily leaving the declarative structure. So you have the structure, the overall structure of your pipeline would still be here, but for instance, I could add, and actually this is something that I've seen in other places where you have, for static analysis, you have a wait for analysis here. A wait for analysis step, and that could be my own, either from probably from a shared library that I have that would run some set of analysis and then return. Again, that's a complex enough thing. I would definitely say go to Jenkins.io. There's both documentation about this and also a couple of blogs that from the Declarative launch that talk about how to add global or just regular shared libraries to be able to create custom steps like this.
Great. How about, could you talk about the two different types of Jenkins files? Some questions came up about what the differences are and maybe what some pros and cons might be.
Right. So this is a declarative Jenkins file. It's a declarative pipeline. It starts with the pipeline section, and then you have the declarative structure inside that where you declare your configuration of the pipeline. This is this doesn't let you use free-form scripting structures like try catches, if statements, for loops. All of those are not allowed inside of declarative pipeline, and at some levels of complexity, you may end up needing to. You may find that your pipeline has gotten complex enough that you need more control, more fine-grained control, and more complex structures. Declarative is, of course, improving all the time, and what it can do is expanding. We're adding more things as we go, but overall, the intent of declarative is to have a static structure that and then have the complex script and looping and conditional behavior inside shared library functions, like we were talking about. So that, and the trade-off here is that with scripting you can do anything, but that also means that that you won't have the ability to use the Blue Ocean editor, because it specifically uses the declarative pipeline to be able to have enough knowledge about what's going on to be able to present that friendly UI for editing your pipelines. With scripting, you can do all sorts of loops that would not be presentable in that UI, right? And also, because it's scripting, the system wouldn't know until runtime that it was what the state of things were. So that's the trade-off. It's you get a lot more. You get the ability to do much more complex structures, but you lose some of the clarity that you get from and user friendliness that you get from declarative structure, where you say this is the overall structure, and you move the more complex behaviors into either shell scripts or into shared libraries.
Great. There were some questions about parameters. Could you talk a little bit about how to define job parameters for pipelines?
So parameters, let's see, I believe, again, I don't know it off the top of my head. I could go look it up, but there's actually, again, if you want, I can go over to the Jenkins documentation here. I think that's probably a reasonable way to go. Let me take a look. So here I am on Jenkins.io. We have our documentation for pipeline. And here's the syntax. This will show me the declarative pipeline. I'm just going to go look for parameters. There we go. Oh, of course, it's going to show me that. Right, one sec. Nope.
That's fine. I think
Anyways,
for sake of time, there are quite a few questions, so I'm just trying to.
Let's move on to another one. Yeah.
One other pretty good question was: is there a way to reuse the workspace throughout the pipeline?
Sure. If you had a simple or an environment that a set of tools, an environment that you could use consistently, then you can, of course, there's this top level agent. So instead of doing agent steps inside there, you could have an agent at the top here. And if I wanted to create my own custom image that had Node and Maven and a bunch of other things all in one, I could keep them all together and then not have to stash and then unstash on other stages. So it is totally doable. But I actually intentionally didn't do that this time because I wanted to show that you can have these heterogeneous, differing environments and have them work together.
One really quick question: which IDE are you using there?
This is the Atom editor that GitHub is supporting. That GitHub came out with. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah.
All right. Another one that's been coming up a lot is it possible to restart the pipeline from a particular stage?
There is a way to do that. I believe that is part of the enterprise level plugins provided by CloudBees. Actually, there's a checkpoint structure that lets you stop and restart at various points during the pipeline. But that's at an enterprise. That would be something that you'd need to buy the enterprise level plugins for that.
And let's see, another
I think
one.
we have time for probably one or two more questions.
Yeah, exactly. Not
cool.
Not a whole lot of time left here, but let's see. I lost it. What backends are supported? Is it possible to get CVS to work or subversion with pipeline at this point?
So I believe the answer to that is yes. It doesn't. Those are not supported from. Well, okay. So those are not supported inside of Blue Ocean. But you can, of course. They are supported from scripted pipeline for sure, and you could do something where you actually call the pipeline steps for those directly, rather than having the declarative structure, which just shows you, which does the checkout for you automatically. You could have, if you did that manually, it would certainly be doable, yeah.
All right, and maybe the last question here. Is there a way to start one pipeline from a currently like another pipeline from a currently executing pipeline?
Sure, you can. There's a build step that will execute any other Jenkins job or project. And if you have another pipeline, so you would just name that other pipeline here.
Great. Well, thanks a lot. There are quite a few questions, and I'll try to get to all the rest of them if people want to hang around and watch the chat there.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Liam, for the presentation. Thank you, Keith, for helping with the Q&A. We're about to close out, which is going to close the questions, but we'll give it a minute for anyone else who wants to ask them, and we can take these and answer them offline as well. So we will find a way to get back to. I did see that a lot came in, and we will do our best to get back to everyone. You know, please feel free to contact me, which you should be able to do from the confirmation email you got for this webinar if you had a question you would like answered. I will also put my email here in the chat.
Yeah, I will also say the IRC channel has people on it all the time that are very happy to help. I'm one of them. So, in fact, I'll just go over the IRC channel. If you have an IRC client, just pop on over there, and we can continue talking about stuff over there.
All right. Thank you, everyone. You'll get the recording soon, and thank you for joining us.
All right. Thanks.